Good evening and welcome to Funny Like a Clown podcast. I am your host, Dennis Wirth, out of Beantown, Boston. We got it all up here, man. We got Paul Revere. You name it, we got it. This is episode 10, February 3rd, 2019, brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. There is only one G Vegas, available at gvegas.webs.com. And today we are going to be discussing comedian Richard Pryor. And to do that, I have on the phone local comedian, also out of Boston, Ralph Joyal. How you doing today, Ralphie?
What's going up, Dennis? What's going down? How you been, man?
I'm living the dream here with the podcast, man. We're having fun, but we're reviewing Richard Pryor, and that was your choice. What made you choose Richard Pryor?
He was like my first comic where I said, oh my God, he is so funny, and I can't believe what he's saying, and just the way he was just like a rebel, man.
What's your favorite memory of him, of it, all the stuff he did? What's the favorite thing that you remember of him?
Well, I remember seeing him in movies, but I remember the first time it really like got my attention. I saw that the one they did live on the Sunset Strip. It was just like amazing. Like,
right. For people our age, that's the one we remember the most. Yeah. If you go further, that's the older generation. But once you listen to that, did you go back and listen to the earlier stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely went all the way back.
That's what drew you into him, right?
I can remember seeing he was. I don't know if you people remember the Partridge Family, but he was actually in the Partridge Family, an episode. I'm like, Richard Pryor on the Partridge Family. Oh, you got to be kidding me.
Who would have thunk it, right? You watch a lot of those old shows and you see the big stars like, wow, I had no idea he was in that. Wow, but...
It is funny. It's like, oh my God, it's so-and-so, you know? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I remember just seeing an old rerun. I'm like, that's Richard Pryor, you know?
You remember him as a star, but just like us, they had to start somewhere. That's where they started, doing small stuff just like we're fighting to do, right?
Yeah. And then, like I said, then when I saw, like, Stir Crazy, the toy, I mean, it was just...
Well, one hit right after another, right? Well, do you remember the old commercial? They said that Elvis changed music, Howard Stern changed radio, and Richard Pryor changed comedy. Now, do you think, I mean... He was the guy, you know, they were all doing clean comedy before him, and he brought racism, you know, he examined it, and, you know, he was swearing and talking dirty. Do you think he was the first, like, real dirty comic?
Probably the first famous, well, except for Lenny Bruce. I mean,
well, Lenny Bruce broke the rules. He went to jail for doing his comedy, but that was about the same time, yeah.
Yeah, well, he got to a point he had to be himself, because before when he first came out, I mean, he was on the Ed Sullivan Show, he did the whole bit on the Sun, first president on the Sun, da-da-da, like that, and he was like, you know, I'm sick of doing, I want to do real stuff, so he went back and he rewrote his whole script, and it sucked for a while, and his whole act sucked for a while, but then he got back and he was just doing what was real. He just wanted to be real, and that's what was like, oh my God, and it worked out.
Now, he was the first guy really to examine racism in his comedy, and I mean, after that, you had Eddie Murphy made all kinds of black jokes, went on Dave Chappelle's making black jokes, but I mean, do you think that was risky of him? I mean, especially at the time, to bring, you know, his view of racism into it?
Well, I mean, back then, it was just like, do anything to be funny, and that just happened to be funny at the time, and, you know, just like, trying to be truthful. I mean, they all, you know, like Richard Pryor, didn't he grow up like in a brothel?
Yeah, that's a good point. They say the real life stuff is the funniest stuff, funnier than anything you can make up. And I mean, he was a victim of racism, and he found the humor in it.
Exactly. I mean, some of the stories he told. I mean, he grew up and he was saying he saw junkies at a young age and all that other stuff. And
yeah, rough childhood. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I guess the defense mechanism. You turn around, you make it funny. That's how you deal with it.
All right. Well, here I'm going to say off a few names here. These are a few of his live comedy albums. Live and Smokin', That Nigger's Crazy, Is It Something I Said, Here and Now, Bicentennial Nigger, Live in Concert, and Live on the Sunset Strip. Now, I mean, you already mentioned Live at the Sunset Strip, but any of those albums really ring a bell for something that was funny for you?
Honestly, not really. It was Live at the Sunset Strip. I saw some of his stuff on his own TV show for a while, which I remember.
The Richard Pryor Show, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Chappelle, man. It was just like Chappelle.
I remember the one routine. He's like, you know, white people get pulled over and it's no big deal. A black person gets pulled over and I am going to take my hand and reach for my wallet. He's like, he don't want to get shot. He's telling the cop every move he's making, you know.
Well, he also he helped Mel Brooks write Blazing Saddles.
Right, yeah.
All that stuff. I mean, I mean.
And who would have known back then? Even episodes of Sanford and Son he even wrote stuff for.
And then Saturday Night Live. I mean, with those guys. I mean, you got
Right. He was the first season. He was one of the guests, right?
Richard Pryor with Chevy Chase, the scene they did when he was going for an interview. I'm like, oh my god.
That was shocking. You'd never get away with that on TV nowadays. I know it was so for the time.
They broke the rules, and that's what happened. I mean, honestly, back then it was like at a certain time anything went. I mean, anything was a target, and that was it.
They said they should have ended Saturday Night Live back then because it was so edgy and it was so out there, and now it's a shallow. It's still funny, but it's like it's mainstream funny. It's not the edgy, shocking funny it used to be.
No, exactly. But like, yeah, those are the greats back then. I mean,
so Rolling Stone and Comedy Central, they both voted him the #1 comedian of all time. Would you agree with that?
I would have to go with the group. I can't just say one because everyone affected me. I mean, you have Richard Pryor, definitely Eddie Murphy.
Okay.
And of course, Sam Kinison.
Cool. Our favorite, right? Of course, But I mean, what would you say? There wouldn't have been an Eddie Murphy and there wouldn't have been a Sam Kinison if Richard Pryor didn't do what he did. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's like, I mean, even Andrew Dice Clay, I mean, the impact that he had, I mean, he changed a lot of things. It's like, it depends how much impact they had. And yeah, Richard Pryor is one of them. I would say Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Sam Kinison, Andrew Dice Clay. Those are the comics like that stick out like when, oh, do you remember when? Oh, shit. I remember when Dice sold out,
It went from dirty comedy to shock comedy, like you couldn't even believe. Oh, wow,
But then it went the other way, and then next thing you know, you got Chappelle. It's like, oh my god, fucking amazing.
Yeah, he's very edgy, right?
I watch Chappelle. When I watch Chappelle, I laugh from the time it's on till the time it's done. He's funny.
From minute, right?
Funny. I mean, Chappelle's another one.
Well, we spoke of it. Now, Richard Pryor, he was born in East Peoria, Illinois, the same place Sam Kinison was born. Do you think there was something in the water down there? They were kicking out great comedians or what?
Oh, maybe. Boston, too.
Get down, drink that East Peoria, Illinois water, man. He'll find some funny. But he won 5 Grammy Awards and 1 Emmy Award, Richard Pryor. And I'll say off some of his movies, and then we'll ask you which ones stand out for you. He did a lot more than this, but these were the most popular ones, I thought. Silver Streak, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Stir Crazy, Harlem Nights, The Toy, Superman 3, and Bustin' Loose. Now, which one of those were some of your favorite movies?
The Toy.
The Toy, right, where he was working in a department store and a owner's rich kid bought him.
Yes, Silver Streak when he's teaching Willy Wonka. What's his name?
Gene Wilder. Yeah, they were one of the, greatest duos of all time.
I mean, that was fucking awesome, and Gene just couldn't get it. It was great. It was
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely say those two. Definitely.
I mean, the first real movie I got to admit that I seen him on was Superman 3 when I was young. I was so into Superman, then I got into that. What brought me into his comedy was seeing him on there and going back and seeing some of these great things. But I mean, what do you think he was better for? Do you think he was a better stand-up comic, or do you think he was a better actor? What would be your opinion?
I'd say he was great at both.
But if you had to pick one, you were playing a game here. Which one would you say he was better at?
Comedy.
Stand-up comedy, yeah. Because he really broke the rules in comedy, where he was a great actor, but.
Yeah, exactly. He was a great actor, but he will be remembered for. You'll be like, oh, remember Richard Pryor, the actor? No, Richard Pryor, the comedian.
Yeah, the comedian who changed all the rules, man, for every other comic, right?
And you know what? Can I swear on this or no?
Yeah. You can do whatever you want.
And he didn't give a fuck, and he just showed, like, you know what? Fuck you all. When he was on doing that, I think it was Live at the Sunset. This is after he got all burned up and shit.
Right.
And he's on. He's like, yeah, you people. He goes, I'm not an idiot. I heard the joke, and he fucking liked the match. What's this? Richard Pryor running
down the street. That was a great ending, right?
Yeah, running down the street. Yeah, and it's like, oh my god. And he's like, I heard the joke, and he just took it like, you know what? And he just made a joke out of it, like, you know what? This is my life. Deal with it. You know how it is. He's just like, wow.
That's a good point you make as a comic, that he just went up there and he really didn't give a fuck. And I remember when I started comedy, I was trying so hard to be a comedian and I couldn't get any laughs. Then one night I just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do it for me and forget the crowd. And that's when I started to get the crowd to start enjoying me. It was, when I said I wasn't trying to be somebody I wanted, I just said fuck it and I was me,
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, that's what it is. You're just trying to basically tell yourself.
I mean, here's a guy who's done it all. Now, here's some of the. He was on the Ed Sullivan Show, the Merv Griffin Show, the Tonight Show with the Johnny Carson years. Which, if you're in the Johnny Carson years, that was very special, But well, here's a question I have for you. Now, you mentioned that he did a lot of jokes about. I remember one of his. He had a pot pipe, and the pipe was talking to him, and to quit drugs and stuff, and. He was really bad on cocaine, but drugs are a rampant thing in the comedy scene. Why do you think that is, that they're so rampant in comedy?
Because we're messed up, bro. We're comics.
Is that what you think it is?
Oh, what normal person is going to travel 400 miles for like 10 minutes at a time?
Yeah, right, for gas money, right? You're a special breed when you're doing that.
No, exactly. We didn't get love in our lives, so we want to prove it from strangers.
But
I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's the life. It's crazy,
I mean, do you think that the schedule has a lot to do with it? Because if you want to be a good comic, I remember I read a book when I took the comedy class, and the book said, from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, you have to be thinking comedy 7 days a week if you're going to make it in this business. And it's such a demanding schedule, it gets to the point where coffee just ain't doing the trick. You need something a little harder to get you through the day. Do you think the scheduling has something to do with it, or no?
Scheduling, I mean, free time. If you're working at night all the time, during the day, it's like, hey, what's going on? I mean, I guess,
Yeah, finally you get to a party, you're going to party, right? You're sick of working, and comedy's our party,
Well, no, you can figure, if you're working that much too, you might be at a bar somewhere doing the show after show, you have a beer, start talking to people, start socializing, so,
Right, I hear what you're saying.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say, but, it could be the lifestyle, it could be something they're just trying to deal with, and, they also do comedy, lots of different people, different reasons.
Sure. We got a few questions from the fans here. You want to talk about, I want to take a few questions?
Sure.
All right, Michael Buster McMahon, he brought up Harlem Nights. Do you remember? He was in with legends Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and Red Fox. And to be honest, the movie, it didn't get really great reviews. I mean, I watched it, I liked it, and you're watching all the legends. But I mean, what did you think of the movie?
I love that movie. I love the part when with Eddie Murphy's fighting that lady there.
Oh.
And then Richard Pryor, he's the only trying to and then Red Fox did it too. Oh my God, Red Fox is awesome.
Right.
I liked the movie. I'm surprised it did as lousy as it did. I don't know, but I thought it was funny.
So you had 3 generations of legends there, right? I mean, it was. Then as he mentioned the word association skit with Chevy Chase there on a Saturday Night Live. Where,
I mean, like I said, that's another thing that was crazy.
I know they were using the word nigger right there on national television, where now it gets bleeped out. It was.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just different times.
He was calling Chevy Chase a honky, and it was going back and forth, but it was so hysterical. Everybody remembers it. You play that nowadays, I mean, people would flip out. Do you think it's a tough time to be a comic where everybody's offended by something, or?
Yeah, because, I mean, it's gone the other way. You know what I mean? It's like you can't talk about nothing. Not that you want to talk about the different situations, what have you,
But it seems like no matter what you poke fun at, somebody's got a problem with it nowadays, doesn't it? So how do you do your job?
Oh yeah. No, I'm sure,
Have you ever had anybody chase you down after a show and problem with something you told a joke about, or?
No, because they're usually not laughing anyway, so they don't care about it.
Well, didn't you have trouble? You told me your song. You used to do a song at the end, "She's a Man," and people were giving you trouble about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but like I said, I did that when I first started coming out, but now the rules have changed, so you just drop all that stuff now.
Right. It almost forces you to be a clean comic, though, don't it? You can't do nothing edgy anymore.
Yeah, but you know what it is? You want to go up there, you want people to forget their troubles. You just want to. I go to more physical shit now. I'd rather be known as a physical comic. That way, you're not touching upon anything. My shit's so goofy, it's got nothing to do with anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, be clear that way. I mean, I don't want to be. I just want to be one of those comics people enjoy, and then that's it. You know.
Right. You don't want to offend nobody, but at the same time, you want to be edgy and be remembered too.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that fine line.
Fine line you got to ride, right? All right. Jay Vance wrote in. He said he talked about Silver Streak and Richard Pryor teaching Gene Wilder to walk like a black man. Do you remember that scene?
Oh yeah. That was a fucking riot. I loved it.
And they were known, remember, for stir crazy walking into prison. We bad. Remember that one?
Everyone fucking used to say that in high school.
that was
That's right. We bad.
that was a catchphrase, right?
Well, they did an interview, and Richard Pryor and G. Wilder were talking about when they did the prison, and Richard Pryor was saying, back then we were filming, and he said with the trustees and stuff like that, and G. Wilder, oh, this is so bad. He goes, hey, we didn't think they'd really do to us if we were really in here. And Richard Pryor goes, hey, fuck us.
That's the moment.
Basically, I think don't get lost. He goes, I've been to prisons. He goes, thank God we have prisons. I mean, that was fucking great.
It was right. So I'm going to say some names here, and let's see, Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. Why do you think there aren't any great comedy teams like that nowadays? Why do you think everybody's in it for themselves?
Money.
Money.
Why split it when you don't have to?
Money's a good reason, right?
I mean, being with a comedy team's like being with a band. You break up, now what? I can't do my stuff. It's all written for two people. So.
Right.
All right. Better to hit it alone. I mean, because I used to be in bands back like in high school. God, we break up over whatever.
Yeah, it's tough, I know, because if you're taking it serious and somebody else isn't, then they're dragging you back. It's tough to work with other people where yourself, you got nobody dragging you back.
Why weren't you at practice? School, I had a hot pocket in the microwave, bro.
There's not an excuse you'd come up with, right? All right, Drew Grimley writes in, the scene, it was, what's his name? The famous football player there. When Richard Pryor was really messed up on drugs, he went over his house and he kept asking him, what you gonna do, Rich? What you gonna do? Do you remember that scene?
No, I don't remember.
I should have looked this up. It's on the tip of my tongue here. Famous football player. Well, he kept asking, his wife asked him to come over and, see if he talked to Rich and get him into rehab. And he kept saying, what you gonna do, Rich? You gonna go get some help, or are we gonna stop being friends? What you gonna do? Rich is like, what I'm gonna do is get away from you because I don't know what I'm gonna do. Okay, well, but it was so funny because he just wouldn't let up on the guy until he went and he got some help for his addiction. But luckily, I mean, he did go help, and a lot of comics are cleaning up. And they said in the '80s it was so cool to be into the drug scene, and now it's like in this time it's so cool not to be in it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the harder drugs anyway.
Yeah. You know what scene I liked as far as Richard Pryor movies, like a scene I'll never forget.
What's that?
I think it was on the Sunset Strip CD. When he's talking about when he shot up his car.
Oh yeah. You heard the tire go whee. Yeah, that was cool. I think I'm gonna shoot another one, man. But Ned Rice wrote in and he said, this is more of a story that Ned's going to tell here, but it was a cool story, not so much a question. But Ned said he was working at a bar one night, and they were doing comedy night. Richard Pryor happened to be there, and he ordered a drink, and he went up to pay for the drink, and Ned told him, well, comics, their first drink is always free, so I can't charge you. And Richard's like, no, I don't want nothing for free. He's like, well, it's not my rule, it's the bar's rule. First drink's free for the comics. And Richard said he threw a $100 bill on the bar and said, clean up your bar, smiled and walked away. So the 100 was his tip. So, but it's always cool when you don't forget where you come from like that, right? You don't turn into a snob when you hit the mainstream,
Yeah, like they say, they're laughing on the way up and on the way down also.
Right, and I remember, we're Sam Kinnison's fan. I remember Kinnison used to go into a restaurant, order stuff, and he'd ask the bartender, or the waiter, what's the biggest tip you ever got? They'd tell him that whatever he told him, he'd double it on the way out. That's what he'd leave for a tip. So, yeah. But I mean, I know you're friends with Bob Marley. You got any cool stories of any famous people you worked with?
I worked with Kevin Farley. He was pretty cool. He looked just like his brother, Chris.
Kevin Farley, or Chris Farley's brother. Okay, what's one of the cool stories you got from him?
Nothing. We just did some cigars together. now he's on tour and it's crazy and hangs out with Kevin Spade and stuff. And, you know,
That's cool. So he treated you like you're one of the guys, right? Where some of these people, they got the nose, they won't even acknowledge you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these major headliners that have every right to be like, you know, dickheads and they're not. I mean, like Lenny Clark too, nicest guy I ever worked with. Oh my God.
Right, and you're afraid to meet them too because you think, geez, they're so big, and then they're just normal people like you.
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
remember,
exactly. You know, and they're just loving life, man. It's like, but yeah, as far as like stars like that, even Lenny Clark's a very cool guy. I mean, even Steve Sweet, I met him. He's very cool too. You know, a lot of I haven't really met anybody that's been really, you know, a jerk really lately.
Right. So, what do you got coming up in comedy? Because you're a Boston comic. Any shows coming up you want to plug here, or anything going on, or?
Yes, I am playing Kowloon next weekend, Friday and Saturday.
Kowloon's, that's up in Saugus, Mass. Okay.
Yep.
What else you got going on?
After that, I'm in Worcester doing a birthday show. A friend of mine.
Private gig, okay.
Private gig. That'll be a good time. And mostly hitting open mics, working on new material.
All right. If they wanted to check out Ralph Joyal, where would they go? You got a website or a Facebook or YouTube, or where would they go?
Yeah, I'm working on a website right now. Just Facebook right now, basically.
All right. So if they contact you on Facebook, they can check out your schedule there.
Yeah, I will be at the White Birch next Thursday for Rothstein.
Where's the White Birch at?
Cool place. It's in Nashville, New Hampshire.
Nashville, New Hampshire at the White Birch. All right. So check out Ralphie Joyal there. Ralphie, I usually end off every show with some trivia questions here, and we've already talked about some of these points, so no one's ever gone 3 for 3 with the trivia, but I think you might because I think we've hit most of the trivia points already. You know the answers, but let's do it anyway. All right. First trivia. He wrote for a television sitcom whose star, years later, he was also in a movie with. Richard Pryor. He wrote for a television sitcom whose years later, a star of that sitcom he was in a movie with. What was the television series?
Oh, shit. Saturday Night Live? That's all I
Oh, Sanford and Son. We already talked. He was in Harlem Nights with Red Fox. He was on an episode. He did some of the writing for Sanford and Son back then. All right. Now, you already brought this one up before I even said it, so I don't know you got ESPA, you're reading my questions or what, but what Mel Brooks movie was Richard Pryor also a writer on?
Wait, I know this one. Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles. That was an edgy show, too, for the time, wasn't it? Where really it explored racism, and I guess it was the times. I mean, back then it was a racist time where, you know, you had to see both sides of it. All right. So far we are 1 for 2. Here's the third question. December 13th, 1975, Richard Pryor hosted what late-night TV show in its first season?
What was that last part you said?
December 13th, 1975, Richard Pryor hosted what late-night TV show in its first season? Saturday Night Live is correct. All right, so you're 2 for 3, and I think that's the best anybody's ever done on trivia. So we'll end it off with this one. If you and Richard Pryor were sitting on a bench right now, you can only ask him one question. What's the one question you'd ask him?
What's heaven like?
What's heaven like? And he'd have a twist on it, just like the race says, well, here's what heaven's like. Let me tell you something. All right, Ralphie, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
All right, Dennis, thank you so much, brother.
All right, I hope to see you on the comedy scene soon, and keep them laughing, okay?
Yes, keep them laughing, Dennis. You too, bro. Hopefully we'll work again someday.
Hopefully. I'll see you soon, bro. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, comedian Ralphie Joyal and Richard Pryor right there, and what can you say? Richard Pryor, you know, I said it earlier, and I'll repeat myself. Elvis changed music. Howard Stern changed radio. Richard Pryor changed comedy, man. He set the groundwork for what all great comics are doing nowadays. Thank you for tuning in, Funny Like a Clown podcast, and we will see you next time. Somebody's calling me back here. All right, I've never done. Let's take a hidden call. Hello?
Hey, how was that?
How was that? I'm still live, but all right. That's Ralphie calling me back. I'm gonna go and tell him how it is. All right. We'll talk later. All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye.